Good evening, everybody. I'm Pastor Kennon. Welcome to Bible study. We're so glad you're here, whether you're coming to us from home or you're viewing us in your car or wherever you're listening to us. We're thrilled to have you here. I'm here with my buddy Stoney. We're going to be continuing our series where we're going through the Gospel of Mark, and we're getting closer and closer to Easter at this point, and so we're gonna be talking about a really interesting passage tonight. Of course, we've been considering the question, "Who do you say I am?" Right? And tonight we're going to talk about Jesus as the Son of David. And it's the first time we hear this language in the Bible and in the book of Mark. And so I want to get straight into it at this passage tonight. There's this guy. His name is Bartimaeus. He's a beggar. He's blind. And he's sitting outside the city gates of Jericho. Now, if you don't know what Jericho is that city with the wall right around it. And there's a story from the Old Testament about how they marched around the city of Jericho and they sounded the trumpets and they lifted their voices and they did that 7 days in a row and the walls came tumbling down. And so a very neat place. It's also close to the site of where Jesus was tempted in the wilderness and some of those other places. So that's kind of the setting. They're and they're leaving. They've come to Jericho and now they're leaving Jericho, and that's kind of where all of this is going to take place. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be in Mark chapter 10. We're going to begin in verse 46. Stoney's going to help us unpack this, and we'll just get right into this thing.
Here we go. They came to Jericho. As he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting on the roadside.
So he's sitting on the roadside. I think this is a really, really important thing because there's going to be something significant about that journey as well. So let's continue.
When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me."
It's a weird thing to say. Jesus, Son of David. This wouldn't have been heard before. Like, this is not what they were calling him. And so they've talked about a whole bunch of other things. Son of Man, the Messiah, all of these, the shepherd for sheep, and these other things. But Son of David is an interesting thing.
And have mercy.
And have mercy
and have
on
mercy.
me.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's some things that Bartimaeus must know if he's calling out with these things.
Right.
So kind of interesting.
Yep, let's keep going. Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up. He is calling you."
Interesting. So anytime the Bible repeats something, and it's repeated now, the Son of David line twice,
And mercy.
and mercy, it's going to be very important that we really look at that. There's something significant about why something like that would be repeated, and the author would leave it.
Something very significant in that too that we can get back to.
It does. So another thing, though, that's very interesting about this is that these shushers is what I'll call them, for lack of a better word, the shushers that were trying to shut Bartimaeus down and silence him.
Right.
They are not successful.
No.
They are not successful. In fact,
It's like it encouraged him to, I'm going to scream even louder at this point.
yeah, and so it made him louder. And so when this loud voice reaches Jesus's ear, all of a sudden, Jesus takes these people and sends them to talk to Bartimaeus on his behalf. Why didn't Jesus just walk over there and talk to Bartimaeus himself? I'm sure he was capable.
Once again, Jesus is trying to show people the big picture, I think. Why are you shushing him? That's why we're here. Why aren't you walking over there to them and talking to him? Why don't you heal his eyesight?
It's interesting that we're onto something here. So, all right, let's see what it says. It says Jesus called him here. Then what happened?
Okay. So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, "Let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way.
Interesting story. And that last part has a whole bunch of rich nuggets that we have to unpack really well. But here's the first thing that really kind of makes this a problem is that Bartimaeus, he was nothing more than a blind beggar to these people. Like they had seen him day in and day out. They had probably passed Bartimaeus as many times as you've passed the person who stands by the bridge of the exit ramp of the freeway. So they've seen this person day after day. They're used to him, and they don't think that highly of him. You know, they certainly don't want him talking to Jesus.
Right.
Why would they do that? Why would they not want him?
Well, one thing it says that they're walking with a crowd. So we don't know if it's the townspeople or if it's the crowd that's walking with Jesus. And I think that's why the Bible can help us out in different times, because it's how you feel about it. I kind of feel at this point, this was his crowd. This was the people walking with him from city to city, following him, and he's wanting to teach them the bigger picture. This is why we're here.
So what I hear you saying is they may not have been from Jericho, but they've seen beggars.
Right.
They know what they look like, and they clearly don't. I mean, they're just like, shh.
Yes.
Right?
Be quiet.
I agree. I think that's exactly what's happening. I mean, I think that they're probably like, you know, enough of you. We're not here to deal with you and your stuff. He's got better things to deal with than you, right? When actually, that's exactly who needs to be dealt with.
Was Jesus really ministering to the blind man, or was he ministering to the people that were following? You go
Jesus
over
is
there
like
and get
Deion Sanders. He's both, you
Yeah.
know?
Yes. You go over there and get him and bring him to me.
Yeah. So, all right. So
And then
that's
their tone changed.
Yeah. So the next thing is that the people, they're trying to not only hush him, but just kind of brush him aside. You know, I mean, he is just unimportant. I mean, he really is. They're sweeping him under the rug. Shh. That's why you hush somebody. I don't want you to be heard.
Right.
You don't need to be heard. You don't need to be seen. Just shh. Go away. Let's sweep you under the rug.
Right.
Does this ever play out in our real lives today, Stoney?
You have kids. Have you ever, hey, be quiet, adults are talking now.
Yeah.
Ooh, I hate that one. Adults are talking now.
Yeah. How many times in your life have you gone, what I'm doing or the thing I'm doing right now is way more important than this or you, so shh, right? And so that's what's happening. And so it's clear that they don't hold this blind beggar in very high esteem because he's unimportant in the context of what they have going on. And so it doesn't matter where the crowd's from. Either way, Jesus is teaching them something, and they are treating this beggar like they would any other beggar. He's an outcast, he's not important, and all of that. But what is amazing is just how persistent Bartimaeus was in being heard. Because, you know, to them, he was too far gone. You know, I mean, I think we get that opinion of some people. You know, you look at them, or you think that they're mentally ill, or you think that they're crazy. They're too far gone for any help. You know, they're suffering with Alzheimer's, and they don't know their own name, much less yours. And, you know, oh, they're too far gone to minister to. And that can be tough. There are people in our world that are tough to minister to. That's the truth. But there is no such thing as too far gone for Christ. Let me just tell you that.
Right.
Not too much. In fact, the ministry to those people, Christ says, will be entertaining angels when we do that, because we learn something very deep about ourselves. And so this is an important passage. They thought he was too far gone, but Bartimaeus flips the script. I mean, he is persistent. He has something to say, and he wants to be heard.
And he says it twice very specifically.
Yeah.
Son of David, have mercy on me.
Son of David.
Who was David? You remember David?
Absolutely.
What was David?
Well, first, he was a little harp player under the
Okay.
willow trees.
Right.
And then he was a shepherd.
Okay.
Of course, he sat out there in the fields, and he was the youngest of many brothers. In fact, it was interesting because when he was chosen by God to become the king of Israel, his father just about lost his jaw dropped and hit the floor. When out of all of the choices of the sons, David was being chosen. David was the one who slayed Goliath with a slingshot, and who cut off his head, and who held it up when everybody else was shaking in their boots thinking having to go up against him. And that's as a teenager. And so this this guy is described as having the heart of God, sharing the heart of God.
Well, that was one point I was going to make. He wasn't just a king. He was a king picked by God.
Yeah,
you can't get any more royal than that. That's like ultimate royalty.
The scripture says the man after God's own heart.
Yes.
And so very, very interesting. So for Bartimaeus to evoke, because they've not heard this language yet,
Right.
for him to evoke this, immediately it draws imagery of royalty. Immediately. It's about royalty.
Right.
So he's recognizing Jesus. He says, Son of David. He's recognizing Jesus as an heir to David's throne, which would make Jesus the most significant king in all of Israel's history. Because this is a big, big, big deal. And this is years and years and years and years and years and years and years later,
Right.
after David's thing. So for him to be identified that way is huge. Huge. And so, but what's interesting too is that Bartimaeus, he gets Jesus.
Well, if he got him so much, why do you think have mercy on me was so important?
Have mercy on me. That's
Does mercy invoke the past kings?
Absolutely not. No mercy with the past. The ancient kings we read about, think about Herod when Jesus was
Right.
born.
Right.
That king was unmerciful. He ordered the slaughter of innocent lives and so that he wouldn't be threatened. You know, it was kind of this ego trip thing he had. But no, the kings back then were conquerors. They were not, and that's how they were valued, based on, and that's why they wanted the Messiah to be a conqueror.
Right.
You know, that's the tension in all of this, is that Jesus is who they had in mind and doesn't do the things they want him to do. And so, no. So mercy, absolutely no way. That would not be anything that he wants. But there's some other little nuggets in here that we've got to get to. But Jesus, no one else has perceived so much about Jesus in kind of the opening of this. Bartimaeus, really, most of the characters that we've met, in fact, all of them, Jesus had to teach them who he is.
Right.
This guy's coming out already knowing.
And setting a standard.
A blind beggar
Right.
already is knowing. So there's something to be said about what Bartimaeus is seeing that other people aren't. What do you think is going on underneath that?
Well,
He's
listening.
blind.
He's blind. But he's also sitting in a place where he can listen to a lot of things.
Ooh, on the road, right?
On the road. People are going and coming. They're, oh, I heard Jesus this. Oh, I heard Jesus
Oh,
that.
that's good.
So maybe he was seeing by listening more of what was going on.
Isn't that interesting? So Bartimaeus could be blind and see Jesus better.
Right. Because he's listening to just passing conversations. He's listening to people chipping as they're walking in and out of the city.
And the crowd could see, but they weren't seeing what Bartimaeus saw. So in a way, they could see, but they were blind to who Jesus was.
Right.
Interesting.
Jesus is still trying to teach them what Bartimaeus is saying first off.
So this is really about flipping the script. I mean, this is very interesting, because not only did Bartimaeus talk about mercy, he also talked about healing.
Right.
And let me tell you, kings back then weren't known for their healing either.
Right.
I mean, definitely not. So, and that's what made Jesus and his miracles throughout this region so amazing, was that here is this, king, or this leader who is healing the people. And so this is really catching the attention of the Roman government too. I mean, he's not under their radar anymore. The word has spread, and it's actually it's now getting quite dangerous for Jesus at this point.
Oh, here's another warlord. Here we go. Somebody else wants to conquer this.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to kill these people. But then all of a sudden, there's a whisper of somebody that's healing somebody or casting out demons.
Yeah.
He's got 10,000 followers walking with him.
He's amassing a following for sure.
We don't know how many people. It just says a crowd.
Yeah.
Well, the last time we talked about a crowd, we kind of did some numbers, and it was probably around 10,000.
Yeah.
So, what standard is he trying to set by calling him Son of David? Have mercy on me. And, oh, yeah, by the way, can you heal me?
Amazing. And so, it just kind of goes, it says something too, I think, about the snootiness of this crowd too. I mean, they think they've got it all figured out. They think they know who is worthy of Jesus' time and healing. They think they ought to be able to control where Jesus focuses Jesus' attention. But Bartimaeus is like, mm-mm.
But have you noticed in a lot of the scriptures we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, you go get him and bring him to me. You go feed the people. You go do this. He's trying to draw these people into his work.
Yeah, he makes them minister to the very person they were trying to shun. Right. I mean, they were trying to throw Bartimaeus some serious shade, right? And he's like, no, in fact, you go and get him and bring him to me, because I am absolutely going to give him my undivided attention.
And all of a sudden, their tone changed.
And what does Bartimaeus do?
He gets up and tosses off his cloak.
Why on earth would a beggar toss away the only thing that he owns, the shirt on his back? Why would a beggar? It makes absolutely no sense. And another thing about a cloak being tossed away is, not only would it have been weird for him to toss that away as the only article or the only possession that he had, but it also says that he sprang up, and so if he tossed off his cloak, how does he find it? Like, he's a blind beggar.
We just established there could be 1,000 people around him.
Yeah, he's blind, though. Yeah. He can't see where he threw his cloak. Why would he throw it? I have to say, it's because he had expectation. He knew that he was about to be healed. Otherwise, well, how else? And I'll tell you why this is so important, so important, is this whole thing about Jesus' royalty and stuff. This is just before Palm Sunday. So Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, where he's going to ride in triumphantly on Palm Sunday, and everybody's going to be waving palm branches and singing, "Hosanna in the highest, here's the King." Only it wasn't the king that they expected.
Right.
It's the one that would ride in on a donkey, and it would go downhill from there. And so it was really, really interesting, this episode. So this guy, this Bartimaeus guy, he not only recognizes Jesus, he not only comes with great expectation of what Jesus is going to do for him, but then it says something about this that it doesn't say about any of the other stories that we've read so far in Mark. What is it?
Your faith.
But what did he do? What did Bartimaeus do?
Oh, well, after he was healed, he followed him.
He followed him.
It doesn't say he followed the crowd.
No.
It says he followed him.
He followed Jesus. And that's the first time in one of these character stories that we read so far that it says that he followed Jesus. And it's interesting because Bartimaeus, because of his faith, recognizing Jesus as king, is now going to follow his king right into Jerusalem.
I have a question on that. We slightly established that Bartimaeus was sitting there, could hear a lot of things about Jesus. He healed this, he cast these demons out. So he kind of knew who Jesus was. And then he follows him. Do we not think he didn't hear what was going to happen to him down the road? That there was plots against him, that he knew what he was walking into.
If he had heard stuff on the road, if he had heard all those other conversations to the point where he would have that strong of a faith in Christ, he certainly had to know that this was not going to be Good, because he would also probably heard of Jesus's predictions,
Right.
the things that Jesus was saying, the ones that Peter rebuked Jesus over, and Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." I mean, this word got around back then. I mean, that's how they communicated, was that these stories would get told and they would go from one place to another and they would get told again. And so it's very possible that Bartimaeus was very aware of what he was getting himself into, but he was along for the ride. He was going to follow his king. He recognized him as king. He was healed because he knew he was going to be, and he expected it. And then he moves on down the line.
He sprang up and tossed off his cloak.
Yeah.
This is a beggar. He
Yeah.
may not have eaten for days.
Yeah.
And he sprung up. That for some reason that just it talks to me about our attitude toward following Christ. He sprang up.
Yeah.
He was ready.
Yeah,
Let's go.
he was. What's also interesting about this is our attitude towards beggars.
Okay.
So I like to push us there a little bit too, because he wasn't important to them. He didn't mean anything. In fact, they just wanted him to shut up and disappear.
Didn't Jesus tell his people a couple weeks ago that put everybody
else in front, right?
Everybody in front of
and
you.
serve them.
Does that not include the beggars?
And serve them.
Right.
So he forces that. He says, you go over there and tell him to come to me. I've got him. I'm going to take care of him. And so that's very, very true. But what's also important is to see how they looked at him as someone disabled. They looked at him in those ancient days, and they would do this. This is how they processed people, and we still do, is that he must have sinned in order for that to be the result of his life. For him to be disabled, for him to not be able to see something, and you'll see this in other healing stories. The people would think that that kind of affliction on their health was brought about by the sin in their life. And so I just want to say that Jesus' healing of Bartimaeus isn't because Bartimaeus did some good and paid back for the sin and atoned for the sin. See, Bartimaeus can't atone for sin. That's not what he can do. Bartimaeus can ask for forgiveness from Jesus, who atones for sin. And so I think we get that kind of cattywampus sometimes too. What Jesus did do, though, in Bartimaeus' healing is invite him into the wholeness that could be only found in him. And Bartimaeus knew that. Bartimaeus proclaimed him as sovereign over his life. He called him out as the Son of David, royalty, which also implies God's continual care, because this also has implications of high priest in it. And so Bartimaeus believed in him lock, stock, and barrel, saw him as his king, and followed him.
Well, then let's go something on that one. Does it establish a relationship with Jesus and our prayer life? Because I've often thought sometimes I don't have to say a whole bunch of words. All I have to just say is help. Help. The Bible says, he said, "Have mercy on me." Could Jesus have understood that I want forgiveness?
Absolutely.
So sometimes our words don't have to be exact. If we believe Jesus is going to know what we're talking about and what we really need, that's our relationship with him. Sometimes it may be just help me.
Yes.
Or have mercy on me.
And heal me. Absolutely. And you know what? It can be as simple as that. But what's interesting is Bartimaeus recognizes his need for mercy and healing, but the others did not.
Yeah.
In fact, they so devalued him that he wasn't even worth the air he was breathing. He was just some beggar.
But
they just wanted to pass him
He showed
by.
the crowd, what you think is the least is going to be the greatest. Bring him to me.
He puts him in the front of the line.
In the front of the line.
And everybody else behind him.
The least shall become the greatest.
Interesting. Isn't that something? So he's not the first and only person to approach Jesus for a miracle, but he's the only one who winds up following him. And I just love that part of the story. I love that it ends that way, because he's really going into the unknown at that point. I mean, he can't possibly know what's about to go down. I mean, he might have a feel for it, but no one could have really known unless they were really listening deeply to Jesus. So it's very important to understand that that's also what we need in order to open our eyes, is to be listening deeply to these identities that are being thrown at here about Christ and who we are in that.
Right.
And so I think that's really, really cool. So I really feel like what this does for me, Stoney, is it just inspires me to cling to Jesus and to be faithful. You know, to just cling to Jesus and be faithful. It really is that simple. That's exactly what Bartimaeus does. That was his response. He just says, God, you're my Lord. You're sovereign. You are the Son of David. You're sovereign over my life. I just need your healing and your mercy. I just need to cling to you. I just need to, and I'm going to follow you. I'm just going to cling to you and follow you.
And that speaks to me because sometimes I feel like sometimes my complacency doesn't allow that. And with all of this going on, he establishing as king. You are the king of my life. And sometimes I forget that sometimes, and I have to be reminded of that. You know, with work, with things going on in life, where do I put Jesus? What relationship am I having with him? And Bartimaeus just says right off the bat, you know, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And sometimes it's really just that simple.
It really is. And if you're out there, listening to all of this, I just want to offer you encouragement through the life of Bartimaeus and say, do what he did. You know, he had it down. He stood up and he got Jesus. You know, he understood who Jesus was. And that's what you're here for. That's why you're here studying the Bible with us and getting this word and unpacking it and becoming real clear on who Jesus' identity is. Bartimaeus was clear. You are the Son of David. You are sovereign. I'm going to follow you. And then he followed him. So get up, get Jesus, and follow him. That's our encouragement. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let's pray. God, thank you for this incredible story and for the examples of both Jesus and Bartimaeus. They're so rich, and we've learned so much through your word and through this story. And God, just as Bartimaeus was unique in these great ways of being able to know who Jesus is and being one of the only whose response was to get up and follow, God, help that to inspire our faith, Lord. And for all of those ways that we've been unclear, God, give us the desire and the willingness to get in your word, to become clear on who Jesus is, to stand up, get Jesus, and then to follow him into the great unknown, where, God, we are sure to experience not only joy, but suffering and rejection and death, but, God, where we are a resurrection people, and so we know how it ends. If we're clear on Jesus, we know how it ends. And so I just pray, God, that you would let that ring in our hearts and that it would bring great joy and great comfort to each and every one who have heard these words. In your Son's name, amen.
There are many ways that you can give toward the mission of Broadmoor. You can go to broadmoormethodist.org/giving to give safely and securely online. You can text Be More to 73256. And of course, you can also mail checks to our physical address at 10230 Molly Lee Drive, Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70815.